Hey everyone. So here is another list from late last year from Classic Rock and Culture, or no, Ultimate Classic Rock. Yeah, that's the website. So top 40 debut rock albums. I already see some that I have in my collection. Let's go through the list. I haven't gone through it yet. I never do, actually, because I want to be surprised with how bad the list is, especially if it's from Rolling Stone. Okay, first up is Iron Maiden. Never been that much of an Iron Maiden fan. Love the album cover, though, by the way. Eddie, his very first appearance. I'm more of a Black Sabbath guy, but they're definitely, a very talented band. So that's their first album in 1980. Okay, so the first two are tied. That's kind of silly. Tied with Dio. And once again, not really that much of a Dio fan. Holy Diver, 1983. Rush. Yeah, I bought that album. I think the first one I did buy was Fly By Night when it came out. I don't know. It's so long ago, 1974. I might have even bought that first, and I loved it. It's a great debut album, even though Neil Peart is not on drums. It's still a great album, and it includes my favorite Rush song, Working Man. Peter Gabriel, yep, I have that album. Kind of a departure from the Genesis sound that, when he was in Genesis. Variety of different songs on the album, and I really liked it. It was really good. That's at 38. Roxy Music, I have this album. It's probably my favorite of the ones I've heard. Yeah, Remake, Remodel. Great album. Yeah, Steely Dan. Whenever I do a live chat on my Canadian Studmuffin channel, probably a dozen times somebody has asked, do you like Steely Dan? And the answer is, not that I dislike them, but I've just never been that much of a fan, except for, a few songs like Reeling in the Years, which I love. I have this album too. Aren't you impressed? Yeah. Deja Vu. Probably, I love the debut, Crosby, Stills and Nash, but I think of the two albums, I prefer Deja Vu. It includes my favorite song from that time period with, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Almost Cut My Hair. But great album. Love the album cover too. I had this album. Yep. I was a Ted Nugent fan. I should say that a little quieter. Yeah, he's a great guitarist. And I had this album and Free for All, Cat Scratch Fever, Great Gonzo, what was it? Great Gonzo's Live, something like that, double album. And then later albums just weren't as good and I kind of gave up on him. But this was a really good album with Stranglehold and my favorite Ted Nugent song, Motor City Madness. Never, I've heard this album, New York Dolls, but never ever had any interest in buying the album. The Cars, yeah, I bought that album when it came out. It was a very popular album, of course. Just What I Needed, My Best Friend's Girl, Good Times Roll. I have a feeling Sparks won't be on this debut list. I love their 1971 album, which was originally called Half Nelson, of course. The Cars, yep. another great album cover too. The Byrds. I've never. I have one album by the Byrds now. It was gifted to me. The Notorious Byrd Brothers, I believe it's called. But yeah, I've never heard this full album, but I am a big Gene Clark fan. His album No Other is one of my all-time favorite albums. That's Gene Clark on the far right, I believe. Never was, like I said, I don't dislike them, but I was never, a big fan of Leonard Skinner. Of course, Freebird is an awesome song. Simple Man. Yeah. I've told the story before, but I remember being 58, yeah, probably like 11 years old, being in the record store, flipping through the records, and this, just kind of it really stands out. And I didn't know for many more years, the music within and how great it was. But I do have this album, the deluxe version of it. Yeah, I was into Heart for maybe a year or two. My favorite was probably Dog and Butterfly, and then they just went a little too commercial and too poppy for me. But this album is great. I never did own it though. Magic Man and yeah, Crazy on You. Montrose. I think I owned a Ronnie Montrose solo album at one point, but I never bought any Montrose albums. Of course, that's with Sammy Hagar on the far right. Let me know which one of these albums you consider the best or the worst. Like this one. Yeah. If I was going to make my least favorite bands of all time, Motley Crue would be at or near the top. Maybe I'll do that on this channel for change of pace from these lists. I'll make my own list. Yeah, just never a fan. But I am a fan of John Lennon. I know he had the three experimental albums with Yoko before this, but this was really his true debut album. And it's, yeah, I think it's my favorite of his, along with Walls and Bridges. ZZ Top first album, a very good album. Yeah. My favorite of theirs is Eliminator, but all of their early albums are really good. So this list isn't too bad. Maybe because it's not Rolling Stone. Pretenders, I have this album. I love it. It's one of the great debuts. Stevie Nicks, I bought that on vinyl back in 1981. I enjoyed it. I have no desire now to like buy the CD of it or anything, but I really did like it, especially Edge of 17. Yeah. Patti Smith Horses. I keep saying this. I've got this album and her later ones. My favorite is Easter and then Radio Ethiopia. But I don't know. I've played Horses a couple of times and I just can't get into it. I guess maybe I need to listen to it more, but I prefer her other albums more. I own so many of the albums on this list. Aren't you impressed? Pink Floyd, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Um, Probably might be my second favorite after The Dark Side of the Moon. Either that or Metal. But yeah, I love the first album. I have this album. I'm a huge Velvet Underground fan. All four of their albums, excluding Squeeze, which really isn't a Velvet Underground album, but the first four albums, they're all 10 out of 10s for me. I've never bought a Ozzy solo album. Never had a desire to. I'm a huge fan of Black Sabbath with Ozzy, but I just wasn't interested in his solo career. I have this album, Music from Big Pink. Yeah. My favorite, though, is Cahoots, but this is still a great album. REM Murmur, I've never bought. I've heard it. My favorite of theirs is Automatic for the People. I had this album. I had it on vinyl. I had it on CD. I had the deluxe version, and then it just kind of disappeared from my CD collection about 3 or 4 years ago. I think Glenn Kellaway from the basement stole it when he was over one day. That's a joke because he wouldn't like this album. But I love it. It's a great debut. I have this album. It's my favorite Ramones album. I bought it on vinyl when it came out. I have this album, Talking Heads 77. This is, I've done some lists where, there's albums I haven't heard like 80% of them. I'm just being honest, and then, I would get attacked for, you're not, you don't listen to enough music. And I probably have listened to more variety of music through the years than these people that are complaining about me. But my favorite Talking Heads album is Fear of Music, but Talking Heads 77 is excellent. All I've got for Tom Petty is his a double CD of his greatest hits, but I really respect him, and he was one of the greats for sure. Metallica, yeah, a couple of times, maybe 2 or 3 times, I buy one of their later albums and then not really listen to it very much, and just they just don't interest me enough. But I really, really respect them, and good for them. Top 10, here we go. I'm a huge Elvis Costello fan. I bought this album on vinyl when it came out, and I have it on CD. I have I think about 20 of his albums. It's a superb album. You're not going to believe it, but I have this album. I bought this when it came out. And, like I've said before, back in the 70s, of course, there was no way to listen to these albums. You would read about, the Sex Pistols or the Clash, and you would just take a chance on buying the album, not knowing if you're going to like it or not. But I loved the Clash. I loved the Sex Pistols, loved Ramones. And yeah, I've got the big box set of The Clash with all of their remastered albums, except for Cut the Crap. I have this album, The Doors. Yeah, I love The Doors. One of the greatest debut albums ever. I have this album. Who would have guessed I'm a Black Sabbath fan? I think the first album I heard by them was Paranoid, and then, you go back and buy their debut, and then Master of Reality, and I even love Never Say Die and Technical Ecstasy. I think they're great Black Sabbath albums. Very underrated. I don't have this, but I did buy it back in 1978. I'm not a big Van Halen fan, but I think this is a really strong debut. It's excellent. I have this album on CD. Yes. Please Please Me, one of the great debut albums. Recorded in what? Less than a day, I believe. Yeah. I never bought this, was never a big Guns N' Roses fans. I did buy their Use Your Illusion Volumes 1 and 2, and I kind of like them, but I didn't, I never became a big fan of Guns N' Roses. I have this album. Yep, the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Are you experienced? It's number 3. Number 1's got to be Led Zeppelin. George, and in a way, it really isn't his debut album, but I guess it's his first one that's song-based. I guess, his first 2 were experimental, just like John Lennon's. But, yeah, All Things Must Pass. Excellent album. I have it on CD. Number 1's got to be Led Zeppelin. Yep. I was going to be really angry if Led Zeppelin wasn't on the list. Yes, one of the greatest debut albums ever. And that is it. That was probably one of the best lists I've done. What do you guys think? Let me know what albums are missing. I'm sure. I'm going to quickly count how many I have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. No, I don't have that now. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So I have half of them. That's not bad. Yeah. Thank you for watching. Please remember, as always, to like the video and leave a comment below. And please make sure you are subscribed. Thank you. Bye. That was fun.